Welcome, Kathy Martinez-Prather, to the Sound Off. We're so excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here.
You know, I warned you. We talk about a lot of heavy stuff, a lot of big stuff in school safety on the Sound Off. But we always like to razz our guests a little bit and make you share with us something that nobody would guess or nobody knew about you, but something that is somehow a little bit of a superpower for you. So, what is your super secret superpower, Kathy?
Well, I guess the jury's still out, but I have been told that I can sing. Now, granted,
Seriously.
I think I've been able to hone in my skills these last 5 years singing Disney songs
Oh,
for the most part. But yeah, I was at church the other day and, someone says, you should join the choir. You have a beautiful voice. And
my
so I thought,
goodness.
well, I just might. So
Isn't it? That I see. I would not have guessed, although I can picture it now. I can picture it. Let it go. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it happen.
we
Yeah.
do a lot of singing in our house and a lot of dancing in our house. It's typically kind of a tradition we've got into. We all get home from work, from school, we turn the music up, we dance, we sing. It's just a kind of way to kind of let loose and ease our way into the evening as we spend time together as a
Okay.
family and try to check out as much as we can. So,
I think everybody should do that from now on. That'll be my takeaway from today's conversation. Sing
but
and dance
I
more.
did ask my daughter the other day, what do you think my superpower is? And she did say that being a mommy was my superpower because I take really good care of her. And more importantly, I always remember to pack her snacks. So I'm going to hang my hat on that
Oh,
one.
yeah, I
I like that one.
definitely think you need to, like, get that on tape, frame it, hang it in your office, nothing else matters. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yay, out of the mouths of babes. That's fantastic. Well, all that is good stuff, I think, for all of us to kinda hang on to and remember as we unpack some stuff going on in the fields, going on in our schools and our communities. I definitely want to talk about your role as a leader in school safety, both in Texas and I'll say nationally. You know, a lot of us look to you, count on your partnership, count on your leadership, and the impact it has. It's well beyond the borders of Texas. So as we get into some of those issues today, let's keep a light heart and kind of go back to the way we started. We have to be able to have fun together in this work. But let's talk about school safety. Let's define that as you see it in your big giant corner of the country in Texas. What does it mean to you as you think about the work?
Well, I think school safety encompasses a lot of areas and issues that schools encounter really every single day. I think, as you're aware, our schools face challenges that have the potential to impede the learning process for our students, and these challenges can range from human caused acts of violence, natural disasters, to those safety issues that our educators confront every single day: substance use, bullying, fighting, weapons on campus, depression, a smoke detector being out.
Yep.
So school safety is very multifaceted, and so we educate schools to really think about school safety in that way. But also, what are we doing, if we can, to prevent, mitigate, and then what do we do when something happens, and how do we recover from that? And so school safety isn't just this one thing. It's all of these challenges that schools deal with every single day.
So you bring up a really good point about what it's not. And it's just so interesting, posing that question to you, like what is school safety? I feel like I could ask, 10 people and get 10 totally different answers. And sometimes I find myself on the plane with a stranger, you're making small talk and they want to, what do you do? What do you do? That kind of conversation. And, I say I work in school safety. And inevitably the next question is, well, what does that mean? Are you talking about bullying? Are you talking about security? Are you talking about school shootings? And I'm like, all of it. That's what our schools are facing right now. It's all of it. So let's talk a little bit about, what it's not. You kind of got into that a little bit just a second ago. What is it not? And maybe help folks kind of understand a little bit better, or maybe challenge however it is that you, the listener, view school safety, challenge that notion a little bit. So what would you say to that? What is it not?
Well, I also look at it from this perspective because I get asked the question of, well, how do we fix these things?
Yeah. Give me the one thing. Yeah.
Well, I say there isn't one thing.
No. Yeah. Is
There
there, give
isn't.
me the law, give me the gadget, give me you get that all the time.
All the time. And so, when I start talking about, what does that mean? Well, I never want to negate the importance of the things we can do to provide physical security for our campuses, but it's not the end all be all. And I always say we don't want to harden our schools so much that we harden the individuals that are inside of them.
Mhm.
But we really want to look at this holistically, this approach to how we address safety and security in our schools. I always say the most important thing that we can do, even though this is a piece to it, is just making sure that educational environments are places where students and staff, we don't want to forget staff in all of this,
Thank you.
that these are environments where we're building positive, trusting relationships with each other, because that's really where all of this starts. And that's where feelings of safety, where people feel seen, known, and valued, can really change the trajectory of a lot of things in so many ways. And so that's, to me, where we kind of start that work. And then all of the other things do fall into place. But to me, I think that's one of the most critical things. And sometimes that takes a lot of work. It really does, and it
It is,
doesn't it
it's
doesn't happen overnight.
absolutely, it's the most work, right? And I think when we get that question, what is the one thing? What law can I work to pass? What gadget can I fundraise to get for my school? That is, so much of, the difficult realization for folks is that there isn't any one thing. We need all good things, right? But I think it's amazing to hear you say the most important thing, the thing that's foundational to it all, is that environment that we're creating, that kids come into school, they're excited to be there, they want to be there, they feel wanted, because they might not feel that way at home or in their community or in the world. It's our job to create that place where they are physically safe, but they are also psychologically safe. And that's not easy. That's a constancy, like all day long, kind of checking our thoughts and our biases and maybe how grumpy we start to get as the day gets longer and, staff gets more tired and those types of things. That environment is absolutely, foundational to the work.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So the other thing I think that's interesting about casting it that way for folks, helping them see that sort of the softer side of school safety, is that suddenly it becomes a little bit more accessible, right? So maybe with my background, and for a time I was a stay at home mom with a background in education. So I'm going to try to solve everything with education. I just am, right? And somebody else, one of my neighbors might be an engineer, right? So they're gonna try to solve everything from that lens. But every one of us that has a child or a student in the school community is a parent. So that's kind of the one thing we have in common. Many of us who are working in the schools are also parents or aunts or uncles, coaches, mentors, all of that. And so something that is accessible to all of us is that approach. So let's talk a little bit about how we can make school safety something that everybody's included in, a part of, or has the ability to contribute to.
Absolutely. Well, I've been working in this space 16 plus years, even before I came a mother. And so when I finally did and I had my little girl, it definitely changed my perspective even more on this work. And it's very personal. And, those are the conversations that we have with all of the stakeholders that are working in this space, is that's kind of what grounds us, because a lot of us are parents too, sending our children to schools. But I think what's important to remember in all of this, and I always say school safety, it's a shared responsibility, right? Involves school leaders, teachers, students, parents, first responders, our state and federal partners, agencies, policymakers. It's that entire community, and it goes to that saying that it takes a village. It does, and it's just not just the responsibility of that teacher or that principal to deal with these challenges that districts deal every day, but it's really all of these people coming together, assisting from that lens and from that perspective. So it's this notion of, not only is it there isn't this one, solution, no one panacea for school safety. It's all of these elements coming together and working together simultaneously, but it's also a mass amount of stakeholders.
It's so varied, right? Like just so varied, and cultural backgrounds, personal experiences, histories, expertise. It is a unique gifting, I think, to the work, but it's also a unique challenge, right?
Yeah, and I think you see that too, that notion is recognized, and we see this across the country in other states with legislation. Certainly here in Texas, where there is, a charge with school districts, as they are engaging in these safety initiatives, that they are bringing in not only just the stakeholders that are part of that school ecosystem, but also those external partners, really sort of helping to facilitate that collaboration between the external and the internal
Yeah.
stakeholders in those communities. And I think that's so important when we talk about, it takes a village. It's a collaborative effort, and doesn't just sit on the shoulders of any one individual
Mhm.
or one campus,
Yep.
for that matter. And so it's really just getting folks to understand that. And also, too, what does everybody bring to the table? And so those are things that we're working on here as a state, to really help school districts and community leaders understand how they can partner and work together. Because, as you want to know the people you need to know
Yeah.
before you need to know them.
100%. Yeah, that's a hard lesson learned for a lot of us in our community, and the work that's been done since our tragedy experience to tie everyone together has been transformative, and even healing. I would say, for so many. So, but obviously, that's something we want in place beforehand, because we know that might lead us to prevent something from happening. It will certainly help us respond better, and therefore it will help us to recover better. So you guys have done a lot of work in the state of Texas. Probably, it's probably a little exhausting to think about, all of those mandates and the legislation. And from somebody who doesn't live in Texas, we look at those accomplishments. I know it's a little challenging to quickly stand up all the processes in schools to be able to meet those requirements and all of that. But it's very much put you and the center on the cutting edge of what we call the discipline of leadership, law, and policy. And when we talk about policy, we're talking about school policy. But let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's one of the major hallmarks of you and the center as leaders in the space. There's always this aggressive push to do better, to take and learn from our experiences, and put really solid guardrails in place. So let's talk about the things that are exciting and promising there, and the realities of what it takes to meet those mandates, get those audits done. All of that changes is it's hard work.
Yeah, well, the center has been in place for 20 plus years now. We were created in 1999, and it was shortly after the Columbine school shooting. And it was around that time where, our Texas legislature realized they needed to have a central location that school districts could go to assist them with what has become a very sort of complex issue over the last 2 decades, not just here in Texas, but across the country. And so since then, we have been able to see such a evolution in what schools are being required to do, and as they're being required to do more, we are being charged to do more to assist them in this work. And as I always say, educators do not get into education to become emergency management coordinators or school safety specialist, but these things are part of creating that safe, secure, and healthy learning environment now. And we have amazing partners here in our state and also externally, but importantly with our state education agency, the Texas Education Agency, who's now a vital part in this work with overseeing compliance and monitoring. But what I would say is that the approach here in Texas is, we've had so much legislation passed over the last 2 decades where we've seen a lot of things that were best practice are now requirements, having an emergency operations plan, engaging in drills and exercises, all those things that we know are good things to do, but couching them in ways that we know that they can be most beneficial for schools. So we are not creating situations where there's more trauma, right? And I think that's the important piece here. But I think that with the evolution of what's been required for school districts, it is our job has been, and we take this very seriously, is we're not here to be an I gotcha. None of the agencies that are working here in the state are here to do that. Our role is to get school districts where they need to be. Now in Texas, we've got everything from major urban to rural,
Me too.
meaning you got 5 students in an entire district.
Yep.
And so we have to see it through the lens of that diversity across the state and where everyone is at in terms of, access control is a best practice, but the way they do it in a rural town may be very different how it's done in our large cities like Dallas or Houston. But those are the things that we try to impart with our training and our resources and all of the information that we put out to school districts. And so meeting them where they are at and taking that responsibility very seriously, that it is our role to get them to where they need to be to ensure the safety and security posture of their campuses, and working with those local community members to help support them in that work. And so we are training in everything from emergency operations planning, school behavioral threat assessment, exercise drilling. We also lead the state in training all of our school-based law enforcement officers who play a critical part in prevention. And I think here at the center, that's where we put a lot of our effort is in prevention. I get asked all the time, how do we know that, this training and is working? Well, sometimes it's hard to prove a negative, to prove
Right.
what you prevent. But what I would say is that, we are starting to hear a lot of stories about students speaking up, parents speaking up, community members speaking up and reporting concerning behaviors. And I think we want to highlight those more and more
Mhm.
because we want to continue to encourage that. We know from a lot of these case studies, someone always knew something that didn't speak up, maybe because they didn't think it was that serious or they thought someone else would. But what we are really trying to push, empower everyone is you have a responsibility in this work. And even if you might think you are wrong, it doesn't feel right, say something. And
That's a
so,
really great point, Kathy. It's not a community member's job to vet the accuracy or to, kind of dissect that spidey sense of, ooh, this doesn't feel right or that doesn't look right. Our job is to report that, right? To speak up about it, because that might be one of the dots that need to be collected, to be connected to engage in that work of prevention. I think that's such an important point for folks. We often say, see something, say something, but I think where people get stuck is, well, I saw that this is what it looks like to me, but I could be wrong. And I don't want to like sound the alarm if it's not that, or, I don't want to be a snitch or any, number of a million reasons that keep people from taking that step. And I think as we talk about that preventative piece, it's helpful for folks to realize that's not really your job. Your job is to say, well, this is what I saw. Law enforcement or the behavioral threat assessment team, working in concert, that multidisciplinary team, they'll take that and they'll combine that with other bits and pieces of information and take it from there. But I love how you are talking about celebrating all of those, you know, averted incidents, all of those, celebrating success, because that is one of the greatest challenges in this field is, to be able to somehow quantify, somehow point to, well, this is working. In schools, we're very metric oriented. And with this work, you may only ever get to know about a very small fraction of cases where, your action made a difference. So, as people do share those stories, which we're part of a national movement to encourage that. We want to hear about those. We have the Averted School Violence Database and project now at Safe and Sound Schools. So we literally have a place for you to go, celebrate success, and also for you to be, learning about what led to success in this case and that case, and we're beginning to, to gather the patterns that will help us inform, our future interventions for school safety. So it's in many ways it's an exciting time, wouldn't you say?
I would, and I think that it's important to acknowledge that we are changing hearts and minds around this. School districts they have a lot on their plate. And so you want to be able to acknowledge this is why you do the work that you do, because it is having an impact. It is changing lives and saving lives. And so I think that, to your point, that is why we need to recognize those incredible achievements, because it's hard work. And with school districts being asked to do more and more and more, we want to recognize them for the positive change that they are making when it comes to safety and security of their campuses. And it's everything from the small things to the big things. And so I think the more that we do that, the more that we are going to see folks understand, you know, why this is important and why we do what we do.
Mhm. Well said. Well said. So as we look at things that have made a difference, as part of your tenure in school safety, what are some of the standouts for you? You mentioned, a lot of the legislative and the policy additions, we're winning hearts and minds. It's, we're creating a culture of safety, but we're also taking really tangible steps to say, well, this isn't just common sense. This is how we do it, right? We have to have emergency operations plans, and here's what they need to consist of. And we have, in your case, TEA, ensuring that those are being created and those are being updated. And so there's that compliance piece. But what are, of all of those things that you've seen happen over the past almost 2 decades now, what are some of the real standouts that you feel have helped us to turn the corner, helped us to really move the ball?
Well, school safety, it's a daily grind.
Yeah, it is.
And I think what and very fortunate here in our state that we've had the center that has been 100% focused on this effort. And I think that's important, that this isn't just one piece of a particular agency dealing with this issue. I mean, we have over 5 million students in schools here in Texas, over 1,200 school districts, well over 9,000 campuses. So our state is large. But I think it's been important to keep this at top of mind. I always want to say that our attention to this work should not be as close to the most recent school shooting. It should always be at top of mind. When we talk about, lock your doors, some of the most fundamental things that you can do that make a huge difference. And get asked, what is so important about that? Let me tell you why that's important. And that little thing there doesn't take much effort at all, but that can change the trajectory of an entire event. And so just having those conversations and keeping at it, I think, has been part of the success. You know, recently, across the state, we've had, legislation passed that has really been focused on a holistic approach to school safety, but also assisting schools with the how to do this work. We're here for schools if they're not sure how to do something. That's where we come in and walk them through that process. And sometimes that's some handholding that needs to take place, and that's okay. And we here in Texas, I think we're just very fortunate that we've been very forward thinking and taking a lot of best practices and really making those critical charges here in our state, but also too having the entities and the stakeholders here to support districts in this important work. Now, is there more that we can do? Absolutely, always. But part of it is just keeping this issue at top of mind. Here in our own state, and I know this has been, something that other schools across the country are dealing with, is just the uptick in threats that districts are dealing with right now, and the anxiety from parents. And this has really sort of been an opportunity to, one, highlight community parents and students who are speaking up and reporting, so these things can be thoroughly investigated, but also to educate parents on what they can do to assist and be change agents in their communities and in their schools as well. So, again, it's been an unfortunate situation, but we've also tried to find those silver linings in all of these types of events, especially when we see a situation where something was actually thwarted.
Yep.
We had a situation like that here a couple months ago here in Texas, where students noticed concerning behaviors that were reported online, and they reported to authorities, and they were able to thwart a potential act of violence in a school. And it was good to hear that we had students who knew how to identify concerning behaviors. For one, they'd been trained, and they'd been trained on how to report it, and they did. And so, moving forward, those are the things that we want to push out and take out from all of this. And so that hasn't happened overnight, Michelle.
No.
That's taken years and years and years of work. And so I think we're really at a critical juncture right now, not just in Texas, but across the country, where for so long the conversation about academics has always been that front seat driver in education, but now school safety has been in the back seat, but now it's in the front seat, and those two things go hand in hand.
Yeah, we
So
won't get to any of those educational outcomes unless kids are safe. No one's coming to school ready to learn if they're in fear, right? If there's that lack of empowerment, I don't know what to do. This is concerning me. I saw something. I'm not sure what to do about it. That is the enemy of learning. That is the enemy of growth. And obviously that goes against the work here, the objective of keeping everybody safe and sound. So I just love that you're honoring the fact that, gosh, we wish it was something you could just wave a wand and, instantly have or purchase, for your community, or, do this one thing. And the reality is it's just engaging everybody in the work, finding those meaningful ways for people to contribute. I love you highlighted, having leadership. Like, it really does make an extraordinary difference. That's one of the things that I see when I look at the work that's been done in Texas, is from the top leadership, right? A lot of our schools and communities are having to do this work from the bottom, and it can be done. But wow, wouldn't it be great if, we were meeting in the middle, and there was, good leadership and guidance and resources and trainings It's not like there was, or, every now and then I hear about a teacher prep program or a graduate program that's incorporating a class or a seminar about school safety, but it wasn't anywhere in any of my degree programs. It was just kind of like, well, you'll just figure that part out, right? People can't do that when they're also trying to teach algebra and, serve students with disabilities and think about nutrition and wellness and all of the things that we are asking our schools and communities to do. So it really does take a strong captain. There's got to be that leadership, kind of cutting the path. And those community champions, you talked about the students. They're the ones who are stopping most of these things that we are seeing in our schools and communities, these threats that are so challenging, particularly now for all of our schools and communities. Our students have the power to really help us combat those and get to the point of intervening when necessary. So just lots and lots of good work to celebrate there.
Yes, I will say that I think, when young people are provided with that training and that support and those opportunities to be involved and engage, they can help reduce violence and create that positive climate. And one of the things I'm really excited about at the center is that we have developed a statewide program that is focused on engaging middle and high school students in school safety initiatives, because we want to get their valuable perspective on, as I've mentioned, is a multifaceted issue. And so we've just started a statewide represented youth advisory board.
I love this
Um,
program. I'm a big
yes,
fan. I'm a big fan.
yes,
Mhm.
yes. We have our inaugural members. We selected 9 students from across the state of Texas, and they will be serving as that youth voice. Because we often hear, you're training all the adults in the room, but we can help.
Mhm.
And so
There's a lot
we're
more of them, by the way.
yeah.
They're younger and they have more energy and so many good ideas.
More energy, more I was not like that at that age, and so, some of these I'm like, You're gonna be future president, future
Seriously. Well,
future leader for sure, so let's hone that and bring them along for this important work because they can help."
what's neat too about the student leadership work? We have a similar program called Safe and Sound Students, and one of the most exciting things for me is seeing leaders come from maybe places that you would not have expected. I think a lot of the students that get recognition as leaders are doing student government, or they're high flyers, they're in the honor society, or they're captain of this team or that. So those are the kind of places we've had opportunities for leadership in schools for decades upon decades, and they really haven't changed that much. But now, when you insert this new opportunity, it opens up to a whole new cohort of leaders who bring their natural skill sets, their experiences, their fresh eyes, and their perspective to this new work. For many of them in school safety, so it's really just exciting. You're seeing students that maybe we're marginalized in some way in terms of the leadership work in the school community. And there's a place for them at this table. There's a lot of room for different ideas, for diversity of experience and background and perspective. So kudos to you guys for doing that, stepping in such a big way. I know it will make a huge difference.
We're excited about it.
So, what do you see right now as kind of the upcoming and emerging challenges that we're beginning to see in our schools and communities?
Well, there's a lot. Everything is sort of evolving. When we think about just about safety in terms of cyberbullying. We're seeing some things change in terms of how AI is now being a
Big one,
it
right?
is, and how that's being manipulated to share, images of peers in a way that is illegal.
Yeah.
And so just sort of seeing how technology is playing a part in a lot of this and being weaponized
Yeah.
to victimize other students, and not just students, but people in general, and getting questions from schools about how do we tackle this. So those are some things that are percolating to the top. I think too is just now we have seen and know about this contagion effect. We have a highly publicized mass casualty event. They typically see an uptick
Yes.
in copycats.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that we are just now seeing those happening almost every week, regardless if there is an event that took place. So how do we deal with that? Because when you have a huge law enforcement response that impacts learning, it impacts folks' mental health. There's so many other things that come into play than just the response piece to it. But there's a trickle effect here, and so I think we're going to see more and more of these. And we've been asked, why is that? Well, advances in technology. We're seeing these things are now being trendy with students. It's a joke. It's funny, and trying to educate them that it's not. There will be serious consequences for things like that, whether school discipline or at the criminal level. So things are just evolving, and I think it's creating some challenges for school districts, and that's why we're here to help them navigate that. And so once you think you've got something sort of maybe a handle on it, something else pops up. And these are some of the things that we're seeing percolate to the top. But one of the things that I have seen that's been a positive here in our state with the threat assessment piece is oftentimes it lends itself to that you're waiting for a threat to happen
Hmm.
to move forward. I think what we are seeing a lot more now with school districts is that they understand that this is actually a proactive tool
Yeah.
to identify concerning behaviors early. And more importantly, to now start integrating early interventions. We're hearing a lot of stories about that from our schools across the state. And that's what we wanted to see all along. But to my earlier point, it takes time. It
It
takes
does.
time to set up those systems to help them also understand how they can connect with those local resources, those mental health resources to get this work done. So that's one thing that we are seeing as a good thing. But then all of these other challenges that are coming into play as well.
Yeah.
So we continue to move forward, to push through, to figure out how we can help schools navigate all of these challenges and find opportunities here to do better.
I'm so glad that you are. I'm so glad that you're there. I'm so glad there's the level of commitment that there is in your state and among, your agency and others, all of your partners, and the commitment to answering schools and communities when they bring these things to you and say, hey, and, all these threats that we're getting, this rash, it's coming, all coming from AI. This is an emerging area. This is an area we're going to need your support. So it's amazing. It's something to celebrate. It's something to replicate in our other schools and communities. And because you have other state partners that are in this with you, that share. That's one thing I think we do really well in our schools and our school communities is share the wealth. What's working over here might work for you. Maybe just tweak it a little bit and make it the flavor of Virginia or Indiana or, whichever one of our amazing leadership, centers we're talking about. But we're all in this together. So I think this brings us to the point of the conversation where um, we're ready to walk away with some pearls of wisdom, some key takeaways. What do you invite us all to do differently or to rethink? This is your chance, Kathy, to sound off on school safety.
Well, I think we talked a lot about this already, but yes, everyone has a seat at this table. and has an opportunity to make critical changes, not just in their schools, but in their community. And so I just want to challenge everyone to really get involved and understand what your role in this is. And it can just be as simple as, reporting a concerning behavior, talking to your child about the responsibility that they have to keep their schools safe, the responsibilities that they have when it comes to use of social media and technology, all of those things coming together. And so it does take a village. We all have a role to play, and we can all make a difference in this work little by little every single day, as long as we are committed to this work every single day.
Amen. I think that's a perfect way to end the conversation, or maybe just set us up for the next one. Thank you so much, Kathy. It has been such a pleasure to have you here on the Sound Off.
Thank you.